Hi, I'm Mimi Gonzalez, and you are watching Out at the Center.
Let's do it. Let's do it. Take your time. Let's do it, baby. Let's do it. Let's do it. Let's do it. Do it right. Come on, baby. Let's do it. Let's do it.
The Community HIV/AIDS Mobilization Project, or CHAMP, presented a forum at the Center on Rethinking HIV Risk for Black Men having sex with men. The event drew a large audience to discuss the issue of rising rates of HIV in this community.
A lot of folks may know that there's a conversation that's been happening in the media specific to young men who have sex with men and HIV risk. On January 2nd, the New York Times published a story about increasing HIV/AIDS incidents in young gay men in New York City, and then followed up just a few days later on January 14th with an editorial. And the close of the editorial read as such: nearly 6,000 gay men died of AIDS in the United States in 2005. Still, many young men appear to have persuaded themselves that the infection is no longer such a big deal. Public health officials need to continue to distribute condoms, encourage testing, and treat those who are ill. Leaders in the hardest hit communities need to start speaking out again. The fight against AIDS is far from over.
There have been several studies that have looked at racial discrimination as well as homophobia and how that influences sexual risk among Black MSM, and you find a direct link between discrimination and engaging in sexual risk behavior. But unfortunately, we have very few programs that deal with discrimination. We have very few studies that really look at discrimination, and this is something that we need to incorporate into our literature. Being depressed is also associated with greater risk behavior. And you find exactly those same types of studies that are coming out with Black MSM. People who don't know that they're positive are likely the ones who are responsible for the ongoing epidemic right now in the United States.
It's very, very hard to talk about HIV if you don't talk about the other epidemics going on. And there's a term I recently learned last week, syndemics, which really talks about the intertwining or interconnection of several other epidemics. That is what's going on in our community. It's not just a HIV epidemic, it's a homelessness epidemic, it's the epidemic of homophobia, of shame, of hate, of denial, and all those things play into this. And until we begin to address the epidemic from those contexts, we'll never, ever change the course of it. The fact that almost 30 years into the epidemic, there are only two interventions for Black gay men, and not even two that were organically developed by Black gay men, is a serious indictment of what's going on.
Sexual risk with male partners, being HIV positive, and unprotected anal intercourse or number of sex partners is all associated with gay identity, not non-gay identity. Those things are also associated with disclosing your sexual risk behavior, not non-disclosing your sexual risk behavior. So everybody, unfortunately, seems to have everything inverted. It's not the men on the down low that we need to worry about. It's not the men on the down low who are the men who are more likely to be HIV positive. It's men who are out and men who are gay identified, men who disclose their sexual risk behavior, who are more likely to be HIV positive. And you see that in study after study after study. Those young Black MSM who reported low levels of social support, who were stigmatized by their families, stigmatized by their church, etc., they were more likely to engage in higher rates of risk behavior. Peer norms certainly influence sexual risk behavior. Peer norms is basically what your friends think. So what do your friends think about condom use? What do you believe your friends think about condom use? If you believe that your friends use condoms all the time and have favorable attitudes towards condoms, then you're more likely to use condoms yourself. If you don't believe that your friends have favorable attitudes towards condoms and using condoms, then you're less likely to use condoms yourself. And you see that dynamic specifically among Black MSM, is that peer norms is a really strong predictor of engaging in sexual risk behavior. Men who have higher levels of social support are less likely to engage in risk behavior. So that's certainly a dynamic, that's something that we can work on in terms of interventions for Black MSM. CDC developed one intervention right now that they're in the middle of publishing with Housing and Urban Development to see if you provided housing for people living with HIV, would they adhere to their meds, would they engage in fewer risk behaviors, et cetera. And of course, you're finding that those men and women who received housing and were previously homeless are adhering to their meds, they're not engaging in high rates of risk behaviors, and et cetera. So we're dealing with some more of those structural issues.
Many of us have been saying enough is enough for too many years. It's time for those of us who are not doing this work, but who are part of this community. Because you see, we don't see ourselves as organizations. We see ourselves as part of the black gay community. So it's imperative, it's absolutely critical that you be part of us. You pick up the phone, what is it I can do? Can I volunteer? Can I answer the phones? And that is how you build community.
And that's all for this excerpt from Out at the Center. If you want to see the full show, check it out on our website at gaycenter.org/out. Until next time, I'm Mimi Gonzalez. Goodbye.